This is one of our most interesting entrepreneurial stories. And I was thinking of a very apt, and I thought the accidental baron is what it is. I'll tell you what happened in 2007. The Nigerian government wanted to privatize all non-core assets owned by government. So the Nigerian government had a lot of shares in oil service companies. When I say oil service, you're talking Baker Hughes, Schlumberger, companies like that. So we fortunately in 2006 bought the interest of the Nigerian government in Schlumberger Testing and Production, Nigeria. So that was my introduction, having sat on that board, into the oil E&P business. Back then, no local company is involved in Nigerian oil and gas space. They're only the majors, the Shells, the Totals of this world. But I could not believe, sitting on this board, the quantum of contracts being discussed is humongous. I couldn't believe it, that in Nigeria, in the country we sit in, there are companies getting contracts for $100 million. I just couldn't believe it. Then we had a meeting. You see, the president, then President Obasanjo, came up with an amazing public sector, private sector mix. Every quarter, he had a meeting with CEOs of private companies. How about 50 of us? Breakfast meeting, and it's a no-holds-barred meeting, talking about issues and what you think the government should be doing better. And this, for me, is an amazing process that improves private-public sector relationships on the continent, and more importantly, giving entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship a foothold in partnering with public sector and government. So one of the things we discussed then is this: is it right the global oil companies are operating in Nigeria and have been since 1959, and yet you cannot point to a Nigerian oil company? He liked the idea. One of the key critical things that you understand, that we got to understand about the oil and gas business, when the global oil companies come to your country, they already have factored your reserves on their global balance sheet. But our nations only earn revenue, earn money on taxes on what they produce. So when they're balancing their global portfolio, they could decide to shut down production in your country or reduce production in your country because they've got a new asset somewhere. So what happens is your country loses revenue. So when we made this known to the president, he thought, what? So he asked the Department of Petroleum to come with a list of all the assets that are found that were producing that's been shut down. There was over 36 blocks owned, reserves booked by the global oil companies, but production in itself is non-existent. So he said, this is what I'm going to do. He said to all of them, if you do not produce this asset in the next 6 months, we're going to have to take it away from you, or you'd have to sell it. And this is what gave birth to the new Nigerian local oil companies like ourselves, who transformed, and that's starting from 2009, 2010. But it was not done because the global oil companies wanted to do it. I'll give you an example. So when they came to the market, they came to the market with an asset called the OML 30 asset. And this asset is the single largest reserve sub-Saharan Africa. 1.4 billion barrels of reserves. They shut it in. Why? They say security issues in the Niger Delta. But yet they're producing in other places. So they came to the market with this asset, but on the guys realizing how many people, think about 2008, 2010, how many financial institutions in Nigeria could muster the type of money we're talking about? Not a lot. So when they came to the market with this asset, they started a process. 23 companies bid it. 3 companies, one was awarded at 1.3295 billion. We came second at 850 plus 40, so 890. And the third bid at 800. But they set a process that was very clear in the bid document, saying if I negotiate with number one for 6 months and you do not close, I have to move to number two. So when they started negotiating with the first guy, unfortunately, he was trying to be smart. When he realized number two bid at 890, he bid at 1.295 million, he decided to have cold feet. But he thought, if I go back to Shell, Total, and Eni, and I tell them, listen, I've had a rethink, I can offer you 1.1 million. It's still better than 890. So when we got wind of this, we got our lawyers to write to them and saying, listen, you set out in the process letter that 890 is the next man in line if after 6 months you do not. And if you do, we will have to sue you. So of course, that put them in a corner. So what they did was they called us and they gave us 21 days to come up with $890 million. What a mountain to climb. But again, this is part of the African story of what we all stand to benefit. And I say this everywhere in the world. There's a fellow young global leader, South African, who I met in 2007 in Davos. We just got along and we were talking. And he says, Kola, you know, I run the global investment banking business for Standard Chartered. If there's anything we could do, please don't hesitate. So I call him up. I said, hey, how are you? He said, great, how's it going? I said, listen, remember our discussion? I just want to borrow a small amount of money from you. I've got a deal and I need to come up with some money. I've got 21 days to come up with $850 million. He said, what did you say? I said, $850 million. We've got 21 days to do this deal. Said, you know what, Kola? Why not? Let me plug you with my team in London and let's see what we can do together. And believe you me, Standard Bank of South Africa came up, and check this out, the single largest debt obligation globally, not to Anglo-American, to a Nigerian company called Shoreline for $800 million. This is the beauty of our continent.